I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Expats star Brian T. Brian, first of all, with this show, Expats, I think there's a real universality to the emotional themes that permeate the series. The loss of a child is probably the most harrowing thing any parent could ever endure. And so I'm just wondering, when you landed the role of Clarke, um, were you conscious of how it might have had an impact on you on a personal level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, gosh, when I first read the sides, even it had an emotional impact. It was post the sides were post Gus, us in the morgue, and me talking about the last time I had pizza. And it was such a moving piece from start to finish, and it completely arced in its own scene. And that's very rare as far as an artist is concerned. Usually need a whole entire storyline or script to do that. And in this one scene, it packed so much into it. And that's a testament to Lulu. That's a testament to the writers and to the way that we wanted to tell this particular story. So I had a deep connection to it immediately because I myself personally have a daughter. I have an 8-year-old. And like you said earlier, for anyone to lose one of their children is, you wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy.
No, not at all. I mean, this show is primarily about these three women, these three expatriate women whose lives become entangled. But what I loved from my perspective was your story, your character's story. It really resonated with me. I have two children as well. They're running around right now getting ready for school. And
Yeah.
just the thought of going through what this couple have gone through and the way that Lulu Wang really pinpoints the emotional pain that they're going through, I felt to be so just really, really inspiring and strange, and just it was a really, really unusual experience for the viewer. I'm curious then, you're in it. And so after
Yeah.
going through this process, what did you most, I guess, learn about yourself, not only as an actor, but as a man when doing this show?
Wow. I think personally for myself, and I'll be very frank, that I wouldn't necessarily be here sitting with you talking about this series or myself without literally standing on the shoulders of these Titan women, right? That developed it, that produced it, that created this particular show. And I can even go on further and back into my life and literally on the backs of, my mother and my grandmother and my aunt literally carrying me around and nurturing me to become the human that I am today, along with my wife and my own child. So those life experiences all kind of embodied what this show is and how I related to it, and especially the extremely powerful women that have brought it to life. And so for myself, it's a complete honor to be a part of this particular show. As you said, it's very focused on the women, but even as an addition to that, Clarke's character is the journey of this man, is the journey of this father. And in that experience, it loads so much more in a completely different perspective. Yet the themes are very universal in that sense. So it was one of these gifts that I feel that the powers that be, and especially the women involved, were allowing me to offer as far as my talent was concerned, to be able to be a part of this extremely masterful piece.
Yeah. And see, Lulu Wang, she's such a brilliant writer. The team really have done an amazing job with um, painting this portrait of this guy who really represents, from my perspective, well, it contemplates grief and loss from a masculine perspective, the stoicism, the expectation that befalls most men in these complex emotional situations, the selflessness that you're expected to have.
Yeah.
Were there many discussions along those lines with Lulu and the team when fashioning and creating this character of Clarke?
There were a lot of discussions. I think, we didn't want to stereotype a particular grief status or a character as far as being a man, whatever that means. I think what I really wanted to bring to it was that sense of vulnerability and connection in that grieving process, and really define and depict the five stages of grief, and I was allowed to do that with every section of every episode. And it really invigorated me as an artist, but truly, I think it was all within the writing and the character that I was able to dive in. I think they really dissected and nuanced this particular character and his journey throughout the whole entire series, that you were able to feel those things. And I personally just dove right in. I think the depiction of a man grieving has been a little bit stilted.
Yeah.
I think maybe in our society, especially in television and film, in certain archetypes. And I don't feel that there's these markers where you can actually relate into what you've been seeing and hearing as far as television and film are concerned. And I felt that this was different. I felt that the writing was different. And of course, it comes from, a room full of women to really kind of divulge and unpack what it would be like, or what it is like to be a man wanting to protect, wanting to hold everyone together, wanting to um not have anything fall apart, but yet still grieving as a human being. And I think that is the brilliance of the show. I think that's the brilliance of the character and its universality, right? You can still relate to Clarke, whether you're a man, woman, anything, in that sense of what he's going through, and have this sense of understanding, because it's all humanistic and relatable.
Isn't it interesting that as a viewer, you embark on this show and you think, okay, it's about expatriates and their experiences in Hong Kong. But of course, that's just the setting. This is really, as you say, about the five stages of grief.
Yeah.
And it's so beautifully meted out over the six episodes. And I'm curious then, you know, I think Clarke is one of the characters where we really see that progression. For example, we first really encounter Clarke when he's in church and he's sad, obviously, but also a little defiant and confused. And that then gets followed up with his meeting with the priest, where he says, "Oh, I don't pray to God anymore. I don't believe in him. How could I?" So that kind of denial and blame and anger and guilt, does it take a lot of effort and time to be in the right headspace to do scenes like that properly and authentically?
Yes, I think so. I think it's the deepest I've ever gone for that extended amount of time as far as an artist is concerned. Albeit I've never had that well to dig in deep into, as far as writing is concerned, as far as story is concerned, because the well was so deep with all of the things that you actually expressed and talked about, that I was able to dive in and go deeper and deeper, deeper. But I felt like it took much more out of me. It took much more inside of me in a longer period of time to really fully flesh out what Clarke was going through and experience as a
Yeah.
character. I had quite honestly, the benefit of time. I think I got the role somewhere in May and we shot in August, but then also in August, we were doing a lot of prep. And, there's even moments where I was away from my own personal family to really dive in even harder. And then with the advent of COVID and having to quarantine for that long and just being isolated in those situations, it was all very beneficial and helpful in that sense of time and processing and being one and alone with Clarke in his particular circumstances.
Yeah. What did you feel about his line where he basically says that this is where blame comes up? He admits that because Gus looks like him,
Yeah.
that's why they took Gus. This is what's going through his head in terms of trying to rationalize and blame. It triggers us that he's also carrying this shame and maybe even self-loathing that he's
Yeah.
feeling because he's so helpless. And men always I think, get to that point when we feel helpless and we can't fix the problem. So how did you resonate with that?
I mean, I think it's an experience we all have either lived or feel, or is within us all. I think for a father that wants to only be there to provide and protect, and and love as far as his children is concerned, and without any answers as to why this has happened. It always, I feel, comes with the self-blame, and it is that guilt, right?
Yeah,
And I think as far as the story process is concerned, it will always be that guilt, and that guilt will always be there. And especially for Clarke, because if he really started to break it down and dissect it, it is the color of his skin, it is everything that he is as human. And if it was just different, he would make some justification as to why it is his fault. And his race, his complexion, his ethnicity is being one of them. But then also you can even layer that is they wouldn't even be in Hong Kong if it wasn't for him and his job. They
exactly.
wouldn't be expats, right? So you can go down the rabbit hole of more rabbit holes. And that's what Clarke did, because that's his only answer,
Yeah.
because none of it makes sense. And when you're lost that much, you try to gravitate towards answers that may or may not even be true, but they're so real to you. And that's what resonates, I think, to everybody else.
That is so spot on, Brian. I never really considered that. That's yeah, if it wasn't for him, none of this would have happened. Of course, then that means it equals that's his fault. And that's sometimes how it works.
Yeah.
That is so terribly painful to have a character who's carrying that burden. Um, I want to talk about the morgue now because you did raise that earlier. That's First of all, Yong Ok Lee, the production designer on this show, did such an amazing job with what should have been just a standard old warehouse set, but she created this really
Yes.
foreboding maze of corridors with these really unfriendly Chinese morgue workers. So
Mhm.
when you get to the set and you think, okay, you're here with Nicole Kidman, one of the greatest actresses of all time, in my opinion. That's because I'm Aussie, so I'm a bit
Agreed.
biased. Uh,
No, I feel the same, and it's true. Not because I'm an Aussie, but just
Yeah,
because it is.
exactly. But you get there and you think, all right, this is going to be an experience. What was going through your mind?
Wow. The morgue sequence, the morgue episode, I should call, was one of those things that you saw in the distance as an artist, and you're like, that's the one. Those are the moments that is what will kind of epitomize the journey between Margaret and Clarke, right? The journey of what they've lost and what they are trying to find, and also where they're going to go to next. And so when you walk onto the set that they created, it was this surreal factor of just really being in it. And in certain circumstances, sometimes you either get in costume or you get in makeup or you get in the location or the situations of things. And my daughter's here to say hello. Hi.
Oh, hello. Oh,
Hi
that's
to
so
Rob. Say hi, baby.
Hi.
Hi.
hey.
Let's get home. Good. You have a good time?
Yeah.
All right. Can you sign? Love you. Can you close the door? Sorry, Rob.
It's
She
one of
makes
those
it a
BBC,
point.
that BBC reporter with the kid that comes dancing in. That's you now.
That's me now. She makes it a point. Any
So
meeting that I
sweet.
have,
Of course.
she has to come in and say hi, which for me, and I'm just gonna tangent, is such
Please.
a fulfilling, like enlightening thing, because I mean, what are we really doing, right? We get to
Right.
play pretend, and I know the subject is serious and all this other stuff, but she brings just this new light of reality to myself that really kind of grounds me into anything that I'm talking about or anything that I'm feeling or saying outside of the world of my real life.
Absolutely.
Um, but to get back to the morgue, I was saying that sometimes you get into costume or makeup or locations that just don't quite feel right, and you have to somehow make it up.
Mm.
And in our situation, it was not that at all. It was literally breathing and feeling the coldness of it, the darkness of it, the mood was already created, the sense of loss in all of these different corridors was already there. And I felt like it helped us just to live and exist in it in that sense, which only furthered the depth of which we wanted to take our character, and especially that storyline. Because man, if you talk about the 5 stages of grief, it had all of those plus
All of them.
6, 7, 8,
Yeah,
9, and
there's a
10.
few. There's
So,
quite a few.
yeah, so in that sense, personally, my favorite episode, and the one that will always stay with me for a very long time and into my other projects and in life, I think.
Wow. I can see why. A lot of the characters are are quite stitched up, but they all have their moment of release. And Clark really gets his in the morgue when he spoiler alert, let's go away if you haven't seen the show and come back.
Yeah.
When he says it's
Yes.
not him, and he's so clearly overwhelmed, he breaks down, he falls to the floor. What was the thinking behind giving Clarke that moment to completely fall apart?
I think it was the pre-beats before it. I think it was the work before it. I think it was really delving into what it takes for a father to wish for their son to be dead and there. Like he had to that was his wish. That was his want. And what kind of father can get to that place in that level, right? And to feel that that is the answer for some reason, or to wish that upon something that, you know, he doesn't necessarily believe in, which is religion at that time.
Yeah,
Um, but he needs that sense, and that was his hope. That was his hope. So all of that pre-beat coming on to the point where it's not him, it's just it's everything. It's not necessarily falling apart or being wrong. It's the actual feeling of actually wishing upon that, being wrong, and the devastation of both of those things added up. Right? Because I think a lot of people, not, I wouldn't say a lot of people, I think in certain circumstances, you wish one thing and then it doesn't happen, then you're like sad about that thing happening or that thing not happening. And in my situation, I felt like it wasn't about it not happening. It was the full consumption of what I had wished for to happen that didn't happen. And that
right.
wishing continuing to stay with me. And that also is the layer of devastation that Clarke went through and experienced, because I mean, it's multiple layers of that in that one moment in time.
Yeah, when he admits later that, what kind of father would pray that his son is dead, I think a lot of the audience was already with you because, like, we get it. Of course, we get it. The unknown is just so it's just so indescribably painful that at least if Gus is gone and they're on the table, Clarke and Margaret will have some closure. So it's such a powerful moment. It
Thank
really
you.
is. And yeah, I really, really, well, I didn't love it because it was so painful, but I was so admiring of everybody in the scene, particularly you. So look, final question is this. Nicole Kidman comes with this aura about her. She's, very famous and she's very accomplished. So when you finally meet with each other and, you want to spark a rapport, what would you say you most valued about your interaction and working with someone like Nicole Kidman?
Oh, wow. A lot. I think that what I value about Nick is that when you are working with her, talking to her, the aura, the prestige and all of these things, like she doesn't present that in that sense, right? She's just very friendly and kind and nice and I wouldn't call it normal because she's not normal. She's like extremely beyond and gifted, I think, in that sense. But there is this comfort that she allows, right, and gives off, right, that is reciprocated, where you can just be yourself because she is just being herself. And in that instance, it was very immediate. I feel like we both come from, wonderful relationships and family structures where there is this sense of trust with one another. And I think that's what you need, especially with these characters, and especially with characters that are in a relationship, right?
Mhm.
They're college sweethearts in that sense with family. So there had to be this tenure, this grown connection between the two. And I'll tell you just a little story as far as our very first scene together. And it was the scene where we're out in the night market. And it's the moment where Margaret realizes Gus is gone, and Margaret and Gus are in the corner grieving. That was our first scene together.
Is
And it was one of these surreal moments where that was the first time we're together on set, first time actually acting together. And they sat us down, they blocked the shot, and we had several cameras. And in that moment, Nicole and I just had to give everything over. We just had to release everything, right? There's no inhibitions, no anything, because if we had any of that, it would all be lost. So we basically just opened our hearts and souls with one another with complete trust and dove right in. And it was fighting and screaming and crying and yelling and hugging and holding and all this other stuff. And after that, we called one another and we expressed that that was probably the best thing that can happen to us,
Really.
because it created this almost this like sonic boom, right? Like the Big Bang just happened, and then you have 30 years of life together. You have kids, you have all this other stuff because we had ourselves so open and we had to live in that particular moment that it literally created everything that we needed as far as our groundedness into our characters and to each other for that moment all the way on through the series.
Wow.
It was one of these amazing moments that wasn't planned, and had they thought about it scheduling wise, they would have never done it.
Yeah.
But it was the happiest accident, I guess, that could have happened to just between Nick and I.
And yet, I mean, no pressure on either of you, but geez, and I'm being very sarcastic, but I mean, it could have gone, as we say in Australia, really pear-shaped if it didn't work. It would have
Yeah.
completely ruined the chemistry between you. But of course, two pros like yourselves, it obviously worked out really beautifully. Brian, mate, what great work on this show! Congratulations once
You.
again,
Thank
and
you,
thank you for
Rob.
your time today.
Sincerely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Extremely proud of the project, like you said earlier, and just hopefully more people get to see it like yourself.